And welcome to America's Heroes Group, this time with our roundtable and our partner, Repatriate Our Patriots. Today is Saturday, September 16th, 2023. September is National Suicide Prevention and Hispanic Heritage Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And of course, we have our partner, wonderful partner back today. That's Danitza D. James. She's a U.S. Army Iraq combat veteran and CEO of Repatriate Our Patriots. And she brought us a panelist, Kitty Harris, a U.S. Navy veteran and the communication director for Black Deported Veterans of America. And we're talking specifically about the importance of media and radio in advocacy, and also all things that are mass media communications. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing well.
Great, Sean. Thank you for having us.
So, Danitza, tell us about what made you want to talk about this topic. What is the thing that struck you that made it so important to talk about radio and media in general?
Yeah, so what brought this topic up to light for us to want to talk about it is that we are at a critical point where we are discussing the importance of legislation and the advocacy that we do. And in the past, right, we usually tend to lose our audience as soon as we begin speaking about immigration. Because they connect it right to the large immigration problem that is going on at the border. And we just want to make sure that we relay how important it is to that. This is not an immigration issue. This is a military veterans issue.
And then Kitty, so what are some of the things that you do in your organization? So you work for Black Deported Veterans of America, and you're the communications director. So what are the challenges of your job? But tell us what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you once again for having me. And my primary role with Black Deported Veterans is to make sure that we provide direct communications with the public, with our audience, also with our military veterans, bringing awareness to the deported veteran crisis. One of the things that we focus on is sharing the disparities of deportation from all veterans and backgrounds, but focusing on those that are deported to the continent of Africa.
Is that something that's common? Because I never realized.
In the Caribbean.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. So, what are some of the reasons why we talked about this a little bit on our show, but from your perspective, to kind of corroborate or maybe give a different light on what you see, what are some of the reasons why people from other countries, particularly from Africa and the Caribbean, join the military, particularly when in America, it's very difficult for recruiters to get African Americans to join the military just within who are native-born Americans?
Well, the opportunities that the military provides is one of, several entities, right? The opportunity to have an education, also to provide for their families, for themselves, for nationally, and also for citizenship.
And then, so what happens once they join?
So once a service member joins, they are processed. They go through boot camp. Then they're also either go through their educational training for their careers and jobs. And then after that, depending on what assignment that they may have, they may stay in CONUS, which is stateside, and go overseas. A lot of times for those that are non-citizens who do not have U.S. citizenship who serve, they may not have the opportunity to get their citizenship due to service, especially during the time of war, right? But there is currently no designated process throughout all branches of service.
So what do you hope to do and accomplish through the communications aspect? So are you just raising awareness, or does it go deeper than that?
Well, the primary role is to analyze the data, educate, investigate, but more importantly, we're trying to change the narrative and bring legislation to the communication space and regarding our organization. A lot of times, as Dee conveyed, what gets lost in translation with the way mainstream media reports the deported veteran story is reported from a focus of immigration, also focusing on our Latin and Hispanic service members. However, that is not the case. We have service members that serve the United States military of all nationalities. So the fact that the deported veteran story is even happening, having veterans that are being deported should not be happening. Anyone that serves the United States of America should have a pathway to citizenship, no matter what. So one of the things that our organization found out was that those individual service members that had been deported to Africa and the Caribbean did not have a voice. And so this organization was founded by James Smith, David Byru, and they focused on those individuals who weren't able to communicate because they were out of the country. So they created an online platform, and that's how this came to be.
What made you get interested in joining the Black Deported Veterans of America?
I had the opportunity to find out through co-founder, Marine veteran James Smith of Black Deported Veterans, that there was individuals who had been deported, and that this couldn't be happening. How could this be? And that through an assignment that he had as a journalism student back in 2013, he had the opportunity to report on individuals that were deported in Tijuana, which is also known locally as the bunker, was created by Hector Barajas, and was also a deported veteran who is now naturalized, and that's how this became a discussion. And as he was working with those individuals, he decided that, okay, there must be more to the story. And then over the years found out that there were veterans that were deported from deported to Africa, those that have been deported who were Asian, those who have been deported that were Middle Eastern. Every nationality who has served pretty much has been impacted by the deported veteran crisis. So we knew we needed to change the narrative.
Now, Danitza, can you tell me, in your opinion, why so much focus do you see on the border or people from Latin countries versus other parts of the world? Why is that this front and center thing that we see typically when we look at, if you go on YouTube and it's Google and do a search about deported veterans, typically you will see people from South America or from Mexico, Central America, South America that are being deported and trying to get back into the country. Why has there been not enough attention put on people from all over the world?
Yeah, and I will have to say that large amount of immigrant veterans who served in the military do come from Latin America and Central America. The numbers reflect that, but the media has a lot to do with this because it comes around the politics, right? It's around the politics issue. It's a political issue. I don't know if you ever noticed, but you hear more about it when it's time to for elections, and it gets politicized, right? That's why it's very important for us to make sure that we convey that this is not an immigration issue, because then it becomes a political problem, right? And it's not. And quite honestly, Sean, this veteran shouldn't even have to get to the point where immigration is even discussed, because this was promised when they joined the military, right? So it's almost like we're giving the military a clean slate, and letting them clean their hands off of their responsibility that they have, and making sure that service members get the citizenship that they promised, right? So if by us focusing on the immigration issue, we gave the Department of Defense free pass, right? Hey, you didn't do nothing wrong. It's an immigration issue. And the reality is, like, no, you obtained that number. You recruited that immigrant, right, to meet your needs based on a promise of them obtaining your citizenship, and you have not fulfilled your promise.
And it seems so heartbreaking because, I mean, going through a military service, particularly during wartime, is not like you're just going to get a job, you know, doing something in a Fortune 500 company or anything else. That's a very difficult life, dedicated thing that you have to be willing to do. You're basically saying you're willing to lay down your life for this country. And
absolutely, to put the responsibility.
But before you go ahead, but to make this point, a lot of people who join the military from other countries did not live to come back home or to be able to come back to the United States or go back to their own country. Some of them have given their life for this country, or given their legs and limbs, given their mental sanity. Many of them suffer from PTSD because they were trying to get into this country.
Absolutely. They swore to protect and defend this country and to give their lives for this country. And it's not fair to put all of the responsibility to ensure that they do the paperwork, that they're the ones following through, right? And it's their responsibility is that we put the onus on the service member, who often they're 18, 19 years old, right? And they're following orders, not really in a position to where they can demand or request the flexibility to obtain their naturalization.
Does it make sense, Danitza, for the military to then maybe make this a military process as maybe even a part of a military benefit, permanent benefit, where if you join the military as a person from another country, as a foreigner, then before you get discharged, they just go through a process that is specifically a military process to naturalize you so you become an American citizen after your first tour of duty or after your first assignment?
Absolutely. 100%. That would make
100%. Yes. Go ahead, Kitty.
Yes. That would make sense.
Go ahead, Kitty. So
Right now, currently the Navy is doing processing through boot camp. However, and the Air Force. However, I cannot say the same for the other branches. Now, those that are coming in, that is a wonderful thing. But for those currently serving right now, those that may have joined 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 20 years ago, who are still pending citizenship, that may not be the case. This is they are low-hanging fruit. Media was introduced and didn't look past Mexico. NCIS, different motives. People don't really think about Black people being deported. And give you an example, my son served in the military. He was not born in the United States. He was born in another country. He has dual citizenship. But just imagine that could have happened to my son. But in regards to the media, I am thankful that for some media outlets, I can't say for all mainstream media, I'm thankful that organizations like Deported Veterans of America has gained some media in regards to the movement. Now, I also want to shed light on there's various documentaries that have not done the same. Two of them, which are in major distribution, Ready for War, that was produced by rapper-songwriter Drake.
Wow.
It depicts the story of Miguel Perez, who has since returned home to the Chicago area. Also highlights the story about Mauricio Hernandez Mata, who has also returned home to San Diego. Also, the documentary American Exile produced by instructors and students from Michigan State and was released by KPBS. The documentary primarily focuses on two brothers, Vincent and Jesus Manuel Venezuela, and their crusade to raise awareness about the deported veteran crisis. Those are the things that the viewing audience gets a chance to see. And I want to thank Rob Young, the founder of Excuse My Accent, which produced the film Bring Them Home, who also shares stories of those veterans who have been deported, but highlights one veteran in particular, Black deported veteran, who was an Army veteran, Kevin Martinez, who's originally from Belize. So we see that some things are shifting in regards to how the story is being reported, but we would like to ask those that are listening, what is really going on, and to dive deeper when it comes to the deported veteran story and crisis. Also sharing the importance of the Veteran Service Recognition Act, which was reintroduced by Representatives Takano, Lofgreen, Nitler, Cura, Vargas, Ruiz, Savalas, and this was done July 12th, 2023. And so this act will support non-citizen service members to apply for citizenship during basic training, ensure consideration of the military service consider their military service in making decisions on deported veterans and their immediate families, also create opportunities for deported veterans returning home. And with the Black Deported Veterans of America, our motto is to bring them back and build them up.
Now, Katie, I have one question for you, and this is for either of you, whatever information you have on this. So can you tell us what the impact was of what the things that Biden has done in his administration with this topic? I know he's issued some executive orders and done certain things. What has been the effect of that thus far? Start with you, Kitty.
That is an excellent question. Right now, I guess the one thing that we are, our organization has done is to go back to our congressional members and share our sentiments about what is being done with the call. 83 vets have returned. However, not all of them have gained their citizenship.
So they could go back if something happened again, from what I understand about that.
And a lot of the service members who have returned are on what's called humanitarian parole. And that allows them to fight their case. However, their time starts as soon as they come back to the United States.
Wow. Danitza, is there anything you can add to that in the next 15 seconds we got left?
Yeah, I just want to say that we need President Biden to do a lot more to deliver on his promise of bringing veterans back and to stop deportation. Ever since 2021, when he said that he was going to stop and help veterans, there have been veterans who were deported right after. So we're waiting. He ran on this. This was one of his campaign items, and he has not delivered. So we really are waiting for him, and we don't know what's going to happen with the next administration.
Thanks for your time, guys. Really appreciate it, and giving us some information, also enlightening us on what's happening around the world, particularly with veterans being from around the world, serving this country, dying for this country, and not getting the recognition and the citizenship that they deserve and fought for. You gotta be back on their show. Have us in your social media so we can connect and also share information, because it's all about communication. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group with our partner, Roundtable, Pink Berets. Saturday, September 16, 2023. September is National Suicide Prevention and Hispanic Heritage Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producers Ivan Ortega of Scotch Honor Productions. And of course, we have our partner with us today again, Stephanie Gattas, U.S. Navy veteran, founder and CEO of the Pink Berets, and L'Oreal Paris Woman of Worth. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on again. I'm excited.
It's our pleasure. So tell us about what you have coming up in Las Vegas, and also what are some of the things you guys are doing in your mission now?
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to share because it seems like we're really moving to the next level in terms of programming. So I can't wait to share that with you. But in Las Vegas, we were invited to speak at the Military Influencer Conference. And I really want to take time to highlight how incredible that opportunity is, because it does allow organizations like the Pink Berets to come in and talk about the work that we do at Ground Zero. So essentially, you're in this audience of people who you want to be in front of to talk to them about the very things that you're working on and who it is you're trying to reach, who it is you're trying to help, but also some of those stories that are left untold. So it really gives us a platform to share all the things that we're doing, but also all the additional help that our community of veterans are needing. It's not just in Texas, it's across the nation. And so this really gives us an opportunity to highlight those needs.
And things you focus on is give people an idea: post-traumatic stress disorder, military sexual trauma, traumatic brain injury, TBI, and on a local and national level. And this has a connection. Can you explain this, how this connects to unemployment, homelessness, and suicide, particularly among women?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll use, a couple of people that we've had come into the organization recently who encountered unemployment. This particular woman has a child who has a health issue. And so she's been spending the majority of her time at the hospital with her child. This is also a woman who is, I don't want to say prideful, but it would take a lot for her to have to step forward and say, you know what, I need help, because she's a woman of strength. And for her to come out and say, I don't know how I'm going to feed my children. She goes, now my bills are paid. I made sure I paid for the house. I made sure I paid for the water and the electricity, for the vehicles, but I'm left with nothing to buy groceries. And to me, that's problematic. And if you can imagine, when someone is just in a position to have to determine if they can put food on the table for their little one, she has a 7-month-old, is got to be one of the most difficult challenges I think we tend to face. But think about the ones that don't have the ability to reach out, who really don't know what corner to turn in terms of finding help. That's where they end up becoming homeless. That's where they feel like all things have been exhausted in terms of help. And so then they think that their life's over. So why continue living? And so those suicidal ideations set in, and then you have suicide take place because they feel like there's nothing else left for them to do, or that there isn't any help out there. I can tell you, with the help of the community in San Antonio, we had additional veteran organizations that stepped in and allowed us to help this woman with groceries and then regular meals to be sent to her home until she was able to get on her feet. Not only that, we were able to help her find a part-time job, so that way she was able to have some additional income coming in to help buy the groceries, or to help pay maybe that surprise bill, or maybe help put towards the medical bill. So to me, it's one of those things where it can quickly spiral downward if their needs aren't addressed in a timely manner. And that's why you see a number of these issues arise. It takes people truly coming together and helping that one individual to success. But if that one individual doesn't know that that help exists, they're not going to seek it. So it's very important, especially for radio shows like yours, to be able to get this information out there so that people have hope and they know that there's organizations out there ready and willing to help.
I appreciate that. But tell us also, too, like where is the gap between what the VA provides and what veteran service organizations have to provide? So why is that gap there, and how can you describe that gap for people that are not in the military, that aren't veterans?
That is a great question. I can tell you from working on both sides of the aisle, right? Being involved in a committee for the VA, and also being part of an organization for veterans and families. It's not that there's so much a gap as there is so much a need. So you have the VA really trying to, allow their system to take on the upheaval of requests that they're getting. And then you have people that are put on a waiting list because they don't have the means in terms of staffing to fulfill the requests that are coming in. And so you have more requests coming in than you do staff at the VA. And not that that is made to be an excuse, but that's factual. You have them really trying to place people in the position to help allocate those resources or to help people get their claims processed. But as big as the system is, the need is greater. There are people that need help out there. And now, to add to that, with the PACT Act being passed, you have even more claims that are being processed and a bigger need. Some of those people that are getting help now weren't able to get help a long time ago. And so now they're being put to the front of the line, like, okay, you've had to wait eons, it seems, and now we're going to put you in place to get the help you deserve. And so that's really where you see the gap in terms of people that are needing help. I know I've been there, sign up for an appointment. We don't have anything till March. Well, why do I have to wait till March? Because their schedules are full, right? And so people then come to organizations like the Pink Berets or the Wounded Warriors or Endeavors, and that's just to throw out a few examples, because they can't get an appointment or they can't get the resources that they're needing. You get the GI Forum to step in, San Antonio Coalition for Veteran Families. Women Veterans of San Antonio also does a lot of community work. So if you don't have those organizations in place to be an extension of service, then yes, that's where you're going to also see some of those issues with homelessness and suicide set in.
So how does your organization specifically, we talked about this a little bit last time when you talked about, I was really impressed with, using equestrian resources like horses to help people get over PTSD and distract the mind and reshape and retool their spirit. What are some of the things that you guys do that you find the most powerful and successful to help people improve their lives?
You know, it's the group activities that really allow women to feel like they're part of a unit again, right? Whatever that unit looked like then, they're now entering that kind of environment. And so they're building on the camaraderie. And we notice that that's something that women yearn for. Even before they come into the Pink Berets, they're telling us, I just feel like I'm isolated, like I don't have that support that I had when I was in my unit or when I was in the military. And that's why programming is so important, because they're not individualized. It's centered around group level activities. I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a new program that we're going to be launching next month. The new program that we're launching is being run by a professional woman boxer who is also an Army veteran, who has also competed to enter the Olympics, but chose to go professional. And so now she's going to be leading our first woman veteran boxing team in the U.S.
Wow.
That, to me, is going to allow women, again, to find what they connect with. Yes, you get the camaraderie, but now you're going to learn a sport. Now you're going to learn a new skill set. Or maybe you already have the skill set and you're going to enhance it. You know, those are the things that we're trying to do, is help them find their sense of purpose. And a lot of times it's not so much participating in the activity, it's really building bonds with the women that they're involved in that activity with. And then you get to see that things really start to change for them. Their journey looks different. Their hope is changing. I mean, everything that they thought wasn't in the cards for them, you know, now their future is looking brighter, right? So that's why the programming is important, but I find the most success is when we're putting them into a group level activity. That's why group activities with equine, group activities with culinary, now this group activity with boxing. I think it's going to change really what it looks like for those that are wanting to be in that type of environment. Then that also helps me segue into our archery program. You know, the archery program, again, these women are working as a unit. They're working as a team. And we have also seen them build a huge amount of camaraderie. I mean, the friendships that are being forged in these programs are really making a difference. And you see the change. And that's the thing, is that when you're at my level in terms of having the ability to walk into these programs and observe and engage, you really get the feeling that this is something that these women needed.
So usually when you go to Vegas, you want to keep secrets. You don't want to let anything out. Stays in Vegas. You know, goes to Vegas, stays in Vegas. But you want to tell everybody what happened in Vegas. So tell us one of the biggest things and impacts you saw in Vegas from what you guys were doing and all the work you were doing in that space.
So now we've been to Vegas already for the archery program. And the way that, well, let me put it this way. We could not have envisioned the reception that was received when we were there as an archery team. I was there as support in terms of leadership, but the director of the program, and we also call her the founder of the archery program, is a Paralympian, Leah Coriel. I mentioned her in our last radio show. She's a woman to be reckoned with. She's a powerful force. You wouldn't get that because she is diagnosed with MS and in a wheelchair, but her ability to compete, educate, guide these women to victory has been probably one of the most inspiring things I've ever witnessed. And so going to Vegas and having the opportunity to watch these women compete and to watch them say, like, this was on my bucket list. I would have never experienced this had I not joined this archery team, had I never come alongside Leah and learned how to, shoot archery. Those are the kinds of stories we want to tell. That's the kind of legacy we want to leave behind. And, going to Vegas again this time and being able to talk about what it is that we're doing, but also the successes and maybe some of the trial and error we've seen over the years is something that we're excited to do.
And what would you like to do in the future? So you've worked on the archery, you're doing boxing. What do you see as the next step or next group activity that would be really impactful, particularly for communities around the country?
Well, I will tell you this, we're working on what I would call micro chapters. around the U.S. And I say that, and, we don't have the ability to take every single blueprint that we have in Texas and shift it around the U.S. So creating micro chapters, it's like starting little by little. What are the most successful programs we're seeing here that we can build on in other states? And right now, we're building on that in Wyoming. Our chapter leader, Janine McNeil, is currently leading that initiative in Wyoming. And she works with the VA. She's working with an equine program. She's currently at a conference right now promoting the Pink Berets. And so that's the kind of vision we have across the U.S., because I can't tell you what pains me more than to have somebody who's in another state saying, we don't have resources like this. We don't have the ability to be a part of this. And for me, that really empowers us to work harder, work smarter, and extend our reach as much as we can in the future. The way that we're functioning right now, okay, we have a Catalyst retreat every year. Our Catalyst retreat, it has already closed for the applications. We've got a waiting list, but we're bringing women in from around the country. We have a woman that's coming in from Hawaii. We have a woman who's coming in from Pennsylvania. We have a woman who's coming in from Chicago. And that, to me, is one way that we're able to reach them. Okay, we'll bring you here for our annual retreat and allow you to experience everything in one weekend. Within 4 days, we're going to give you this experience, right? Mm-hmm. So for the future, that's what we're hoping to do.
We got an alarm going off. Still there? I think we lost Stephanie. Did we lose her?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like an alarm's going off in the house, and I don't know what it is.
Hope it's not a smoke detector.
It sounds like that. But
make sure you're safe. We want you burning up on the radio.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're hoping to accomplish for the future. I mean, we're excited at what the possibilities look like, but I can tell you our long-term goal is to build one of our own centers, to build an all-inclusive center where women can come and call it their own. Right now, it's, we go and we have our equine therapy at a facility. We're operating out of the Endeavors building, who again, it's a veteran wellness center, and they've been so gracious to allow us to do our programming there. But one day we want to have our own wellness center. We want to have our own equine property. We want to have the ability to have an all-women center.
You probably got to get you connected with the RHF guys. They have a Rick Hammer Foundation. They have a place called Rick's Place out in Georgia. I got the shows mixed up. Somebody they're out in the south on one of the bases, and what they're doing basically what you guys are doing, but in a whole different way. They're making they make courses for the kinds you see, the type of courses you see on American Ninja and all these different TV shows and NBC, things like that. These obstacle courses, kind of like what we've done in the military, going through these different obstacle courses, but on a way bigger scale. It's mostly for families to come down and just to reconnect with their kids and their wives and their husbands, so that way they can have fun and share experiences and stories and create memories and kind of escape military life. So people that are veterans or people that are in the military can just use that as a getaway. So it's called Rick's Place after a veteran who passed, and I believe it was Afghanistan. But I would love to see if we can help you guys or maybe connect you guys so that you can share some of those ideas and develop this. I think these are very good spaces for people to get away and kind of reconnect with their thoughts and heal. I think that's really, really important. And can you tell us a little bit about how the military experience is different for a woman versus what you might think is how most men experience the military, and some of the challenges that women face as veterans is different from what men might face?
That's a great question. I mean, I would say it's definitely individual based. Everybody has a very different experience, but I would say for the most part, I think they're trying to, and I say they, meaning, the armed forces, the military, it's addressing each soldier the same, and really the needs are very different. They're vastly different. And I think that's where we find some of the challenges is that, it's not an one-size-fits-all scenario. in the military. What works for a man in his role or his MS isn't going to apply to a woman. And so it's just very different to certain degrees. But think, also there were roles that weren't available to women back in the day, and now they are. And so I do feel like, women have an opportunity to really show their capabilities or talents more so than they did before. But I also think you have some of those people in the military that have a very traditional mindset, and they're still not prepared for women taking on these roles in the military. And so I think that it's really going to take time for there to be that
growth maybe, or that evolution.
Evolution, I think, is a better term for this, because I still hear some women saying that they're treated a certain way, and it's not that women are expecting to be treated differently. I think what they're expecting is the same respect, and rightfully so, right? Mm-hmm. There's still some challenges from what we're learning when it comes to that. And, there's women that are still encountering a lot of issues when it comes to sexual harassment and sexual assault. And so think about the enormity of that issue that we're having to tackle, but also in the same breath say, respect each other, right? At the end of the day, we're what we have. We're fighting for the same things. We're sharing the same values, the same mission, right? That ethos is carved in all of us. So why is it so difficult for us to be able to work with one another that way? So I think somewhere, it depends on the individual. It always comes down to individual. Because I can tell you there's some extraordinary men in the military, there's some extraordinary women in the military, and it just depends on who has that mindset when it comes to being able to help empower women in the military.
Fayetteville, North Carolina, that's where their workplace is. I was trying to figure out I remember, I thought it was in Georgia for a second, but it's Fayetteville, North Carolina, it just came to me. But I wanted to ask you this as well, because there was an article in Army Times. You talked about something that I think is really important to touch on since you brought this topic up, and it's also one of the facts on your website. On your website, you mentioned that 71% of all women who join the military suffer PTSD due to some type of sexual assault. Okay, which is serious. That means, I thought about that. So if 71% of women are suffering PTSD from sexual assault, that means there's probably more women than that who actually experience sexual assault.
That is correct. And we discussed this too at the DOD level. And I can tell you, when you look at that report out of the Department of Defense, those numbers have increased instead of decreased. And it begs the question, is it because more women are lifting their voices, or more men, feel inclined to talk about what's happening to them? I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think that, you have to really have evaluations done at each base to evaluate, where you're finding the toxicity, mm-hmm. because it's there, but where does it lie? Does it lie in leadership? Does it lie in, what point of the seniority is it taking place? Because it's happening at such a rate that they're not able to put the fire out. And that's the issue right now, is instead of being able to say, we're getting things under control, we're seeing a decrease in numbers, you're seeing an increase. And so, yes, to answer your question, there's still people that have not come forward. And we get some of those stories. We get some of those women that come to us and say, listen, I don't want to be ostracized. I don't want retribution. If I say something, I don't know if I'm going to live to see the next day. That might sound a little dramatic, but that's what's happening.
Right. We've had a few cases of that in the news, media, where we've had female soldiers and airmen that have been killed because of some type of sexual assault case that went sideways. On that topic as well, there's a case that was written about in the Army Times. I won't name the people that are involved because they, for privacy reasons, things like that, although it has been written about. But I guess from this particular case, this was was a sexual contact charge dismissed for an ex-Fort Cavazos brigade commander. So the issue though about this one I wanted to ask you about is not about the case itself, because none of us were there, none of us knows what happened. The charges were abusive sexual contact, which was dismissed. Okay, so now it's just a case of unbecoming activities, or whatever the charge is called, activities of unbecoming of an officer or something like that. I forget the actual official title, but in the military we know what that means basically. Conduct unbecoming of an officer basically is what it is. So he allegedly groped and kissed a subordinate's wife without consent while the husband was away on field exercises. So that was dismissed and tossed out. So now it's just, conduct unbecoming of an officer. However, what I wanted to ask you about wasn't about the case. We don't know what happened with the case, but the defendant's attorney made this comment. And this is what the comment was. Unfortunately, lawmakers' continued insistence that every alleged victim is truthful and that every case should be prosecuted to the fullest leads to prosecutors and commanders forcing charges that are unsupported and contradicted by the evidence in the case. That was actually said by a female attorney, Sherry Bunn. I'll say her name because she said it, and she's the attorney, and that's also public record. Now, what is your thought on that? Because some people do believe that there's too much attention being brought upon sexual misconduct, and maybe things are being overblown. There are things people are going too far with these investigations. What's your thoughts on that?
I would tell you that 90% of the time, and I'll leave 10% for the rarities. 90% of the time, you will find that those cases that do present sexual assault, sexual harassment, and I hate to call it sexual assault because it's rape at the end of the day, right? Let's not try to pretty up the terminology here. And it's a crime. And when you talk about crimes at this level and they want to get a lesser charge, they really try to dummy down what actually took place. And so I do believe that you're still seeing a huge instance of these types of activities taking place, of these types of crimes taking place on base. But because there's such a spotlight on this, people really don't want to be known for that because they know it could get really out of hand and very quickly. Something that I want to do next month is I want to bring on our chief legal advisor, Don Christensen. He has been at the forefront of numerous cases similar to this. And I can tell you right now, he would really, really be able to lend a lot of knowledge and an understanding to why we're facing the things that we're facing still today that he's dealt with for years. And I think that would really, really help you see the big picture in terms of, wow, yes, it's been happening for years, but why are we looking at this through a different lens, right? And I think that's what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to skew your perspective so that you feel maybe it's not as bad as they say it is. I'm here to tell you it is.
Wow.
It's that bad.
And even as a person who served myself, the things I've seen in the military, it's bad. I mean, and unfortunately, a lot of it, I think, has to do with the culture because you do have a lot of young men who are, 18, 19 to 24 who are, away for the first time. It's almost like a college mentality because you don't have parental supervision, but you're in a military setting. But you in some cases, have even more freedom because you're getting a paycheck every month. You have all-post passes, or you can go all-post if you're serving full-time on a base, and things happen. People do stuff, and then you have, you've been locked up doing, field duty or whatever, and you want to burn off some steam, and things that aren't supposed to happen. I've seen guys go to prison because they raped someone off, on an off-base pass. So, I mean, that is, that's a reality. So, but we're out of time. Thank you for coming back again. And also, I want to see you have some great information for us next month. I really appreciate that. You're already kind of giving us a teaser as to what you're going to talk about.
Yes. And thank you for having me on again. I appreciate, the opportunity to be on your platform and to be able to share everything that we're doing. But also, thank you for everything you're doing.
I appreciate that. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
We have in our Chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. Okay.
On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes! Yes!
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time we have a roundtable, our partner. We are globally connected with Kaiser Health News. That's KFF Health News. Today is Saturday, September 16, 2023. September is National Suicide Prevention and Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm Sean Claiborne, the host, co-host, Our host is Kelley. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scotch Honor Productions. And we have Arthur Allen with us today as a panelist. He's a KFF Health News senior correspondent and writes about the FDA and pharmaceutical industry, as well as COVID-related topics. Arthur has been a freelance writer for the New York Times, Washington Post, the Smithsonian, and the Associated Press. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So there's some things that we're going to talk about as far as the new COVID vaccine has come out. So up until now, so correct me if I'm wrong, but if I got the timing wrong or if something is inaccurate what I'm talking about, but up until now, we've had initially in 2020 we had the initial vaccines by Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson. Then in 2021 we had the first booster. That was around the fall. In 2022 around the fall again we had a second booster. Which was the third dose, basically, of the vaccine. And then this year in 2023, we have a fourth round of the vaccine. What's the difference about this new vaccine and this fourth round?
As everybody knows, or if they're paying the slightest bit of attention, unfortunately, this virus has mutated like crazy, and continues to do so. There were periods earlier in the pandemic, on the first year or two, where the mutations were really huge, and they led to bad new outbreaks of disease, deaths, and so on. Now things have calmed down a little bit, but the virus is still mutating, and so the scientists and the drug companies are trying to keep up with the mutations. And every time they release a new vaccine, they basically match it to whatever they think the mutations are going to be that are circulating when it's rolled out. And so in this case, they have a pretty good match. The vaccine that just started rolling out this week contains, one particular mutation, and like 90% of the viruses that are going around now are related to that one closely enough that it should have some impact, positive impact.
And one thing I learned from reading your article is that, and kind of got exposure to, is the fact it seems like there's different. It's not like there's one variant, because we usually hear about one major variant, like it's the Omicron variant, or this whatever the other one was, the Kraken variant that came out last year.
The Delta, the Alpha,
So it's just like but it's really many different variants, and so the vaccine, it all depends on the cases that are out there. Like one variant might only affect maybe 5% of the population or 5% of the cases. The other one might be 20%. Another one might be 15%. So it's really a combination of many different variants that these vaccines are trying to address. So why does the CDC recommend this? Well, first, before I get to that question, so the first round we had about how many people in the first round would you say, from your research, if you have this information, got the original dosage? What percentage of the country in say 2020, 29, and maybe early 2021 actually got their first initial vaccines? So you did touch on this a little bit in the article.
When it first came out, as you recall, everybody, there was there wasn't enough for everybody to go around. And so people were, I remember, I think the first vaccine came out in December. I didn't get mine till April because we were all waiting. I think eventually the number, and I should have that right at the tip of my tongue. I think it was 70-80%.
Wow.
Although not so much for kids. So by the time it rolled out for kids, it was lower, and for younger adults too. But I think for adults, it was certainly, I'm going to say it was over 70%.
And then the second round, maybe even higher, maybe?
No, the second round was lower. So the second round, the second round that came out in the fall of 2021, about 50% got vaccinated with that one, 50% of adults. And then the third one, the bivalent, which came out in the fall of 2022, that only 17% of Americans got it. Something like 45% of people over 65 who are, the people who really should be getting this vaccine.
And I'm assuming they maybe got it because they're going to their doctor more frequently, and the doctor is just recommending, and they're getting the flu shot and getting the vaccine because,
Right.
it's just they're getting more access to health
care. Right. And I think, people are aware that, if you're older, I mean, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I believe that 80% of the deaths have been in older people. So there are some other vulnerable groups too. People with chronic illness and immune suppression because they have cancer or other diseases. But, a lot of the deaths are older people.
So that leads me to this question. So the numbers were falling, and 17% seems dramatic from, the first time. So it seems like people are just not, participating at the same level. So why does the CDC recommend this? And then, but also, how does the CDC recommend this vaccine?
I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, there are definitely scientists out there who I spoke to who said we should just recommend this for the vulnerable groups because, I mean, the uptake is so low anyway. And to be frank, like if you're a healthy 35-year-old or 20-year-old or even 10-year-old, the chances that you're going to get gravely ill or die from COVID are really low, especially now that so many people have gotten at least one vaccine, and most of us have also been ill with the disease. And that gives you protection also, assuming that you don't have a really bad experience. But so the but is if they didn't make the recommendation for everybody, then people who feel for one reason or another that they want the vaccine, either because they're in one of these vulnerable groups or they have let's say they have a grandparent who's very ill who they take care of or visit a lot, and they don't want to get sick. So this is a chance to get where everybody, when you make when the CDC issues a recommendation of the type that they issued last week, which is a universal recommendation, that means that insurance companies have to pay for it. And this other program goes into effect where people who don't have insurance can get it for free. If you had a limited recommendation, all that stuff gets more complicated. So if you're a person who doesn't fall into the category of recommended people, you might have trouble getting it. Fact is, they recommended it. I personally think that the vaccine is very safe, and there's only small groups of people who would like be hesitant for safety reasons. And, so I think it's worth getting, but there aren't going to be any mandates. That was, you're talking 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So if you don't want to get it, you don't have to get it. And so, but by broadly recommending it, they're letting anybody who does want it get it. And personally, my view is that for most people, it's the right decision.
That makes a lot of sense. And it was kind of confusing me a little bit because I think that's part of the controversy around this still out there. It's not quite dissipated because you still have those hard, fast people that believe that it's some kind of that people die from the vaccine or that people catch COVID from the vaccine, things like that. And people that swear by that they've lost friends to the vaccine, even though those people died of COVID. But much like the flu, the COVID vaccine does not guarantee non-infection. And even if you get the vaccine, you might still get sick. But then also maybe if you don't get sick, you can still pass it on to other people. I think maybe perhaps that was what I think turned a lot of people off because they were under the impression that if I got the vaccine, I'm bulletproof. I can do whatever I want to do, and I'm never going to infect anybody else around me.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you're totally spot on that, and I think that that initial confusion about it, which partly you can attribute to bad communication from the scientists or the government, partly you can attribute to the fact that nobody really knew how well this vaccine was going to work, and so there was kind of a lot of optimism about it, and so a lot of people felt kind of like cheesed off. I mean, either that it was a ripoff by the drug companies, or why bother getting it? I think, and I think in any given case, I could get vaccinated next week, and then a month later get infected. It's possible, right? I mean, the chances are that I will be protected at least for a few months from getting infected. So it's all like it's a percentages thing. I mean, it's like the percentages of being hurt by the vaccine are tiny. And the percentages of getting some protection of it are pretty good, at least for a few months. So we're looking at the fall season, getting into like Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah or whatever, where people are traveling, seeing maybe elderly relatives, etc. It seems like a low risk thing to do, even though, there are no guarantees about it. And I think the communicators on this, whether it's journalists or the government or scientists, need to be totally straight about that.
Mm-hmm. And then also you kind of touched on this a little bit, and even into the last piece of information you gave us. There is a difference between getting infected and getting sick. Because there was two things that are not one and the same. You can be infected and go around and infect other people and never get sick. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's true. Yeah, I mean that's true. This virus. This virus is very strange in that it's not the only one like this, but it's kind of unusual that you can be asymptomatic and carrying it and it's spreading it, like Typhoid Mary and back in the day. But it's and so that's also possible. It's just that I think it's less likely that if you're that if you are infected to a degree that you're not transmitting, that you're not ill, it's also likely you won't be as good a transmitter of the disease. For one thing, you're going to have no symptoms. You're not going to be coughing. You're not going to be sneezing. So those are two really good ways of spreading viruses.
Yeah, definitely. What was the biggest thing that you most profound thing I should say that you learned from writing this particular article?
Well, I mean, it's surprising to me to talk to. There are definitely vaccine experts out there who felt somewhat didn't want to just give a blank check and say everybody should get this, but still voted, like on this panel, voted in favor of universal recommendation for the reasons I explained, that it just so that anybody who wants it, can get it. I mean, I'm sort of, I find it sort of, I was a little surprised though that, basically even at this point in time where there's so much distrust of the government, there's so much polarization, this panel of scientists who are independent scientists, they just came through and said what they thought was the right decision, even knowing that half of the population out there, I guess, is just going to ignore them or say that they're all, liars or, in the pocket of the drug industry. So I think that's kind of brave to just, come out and say what you think is right and that you think is the best move to protect population. And, I guess as somebody who's written about vaccines for more than 20 years, I think that the vaccine makers and the people who study vaccines and give expert opinions about them are a fairly reliable group.
Now, in your research, did you come across some information about what are the doctors saying that how long you should wait if you've already been sick or if you've already just had a vaccine?
Yeah, they're saying 2 months, after being ill is probably good. And definitely after getting vaccinated, you wouldn't want to get one more than, less than 2 months afterwards. So those are basic things. I mean, personally, I got sick last spring. I was in no hurry to get another one. And I even was on the fence about this one. But then I thought, it can't hurt. Nobody else is going to get. I'm not taking it away from somebody else. Mm-hmm. It's not going to hurt, and maybe I'll get a few more months, of protection, and maybe I'll get sick again next year, But at least for the period where I've been vaccinated, I won't be getting sick or giving it to somebody else, probably.
Or possibly, hopefully. I got sick was it this year? Last year I got sick, same thing. I got the vaccine, got sick. I didn't get the third shot yet. Right before I was getting ready to get the third shots when I got sick, but it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. That could have been because of the vaccine, I'm in that high risk category. So, I figured, what's the better, be safe than sorry. I have lost a lot of friends to COVID. I lost 2020 was a rough year for me. It was just a lot of people that I knew that I had no clue that they had they were susceptible to something like this just were there one day
Right.
and 2 weeks later they were gone.
Right. No, I mean, those bad old days, we definitely don't want that coming back. And it's still, I mean, there are people still dying. I mean, they're not as visible. It's not like the hospitals are overrun with people, and most of them are elderly people who are the kind of people, I mean, the sort of groups of people who often, like, will die of flu or RSV, some infectious diseases like the thing that kind of finishes them off. I mean, if they're ill, very chronically ill and so on. But even so, I mean, that could be a tragedy. And then the deaths of younger people are even worse. So,
So,
but yeah, I think we all feel, I do feel like what you're saying, that we all feel a little bit sort of, there was that initial excitement about the vaccine for most of the country, at the end of 2020. And then, it just didn't quite pan out the way we wanted. But I guess, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good or whatever is applicable here. It's probably worth getting it.
Mm. Now, one thing I want to mention to our audience is that we don't give medical advice on this show. So if you're considering taking this vaccine, our audience listening, or people watching on YouTube and on Facebook, WVON audience in Chicago here, talk to your doctor who knows your body the best. We do not give medical advice. Don't get a vaccine because I said do it, or don't get a vaccine or not get a vaccine because I said do it or not do it, or anybody on the radio.
Or because I said it.
Or anybody said it, because the sad part about it is that why do you think, for that reason, why do you think there's so much misinformation out there? What are some of the root causes? As someone who's actually done the research and actually looked at the facts and looked at both, all the things you can possibly do, and you've been doing this for the last 20 years, why are some of this how is so much misinformation going on about the vaccine?
Well, I mean, first, because I think there's a number of reasons. One, like, vaccines are just kind of a scary idea because you're healthy when you get them, and it's like getting any kind of medical procedure, I think, has a certain amount of risk and seems a little risky, and especially if you're not ill. I mean, people who have cancer will undergo the most horrible treatment, right? Chemo, be nauseous or have their hair fall out, but they're doing it because they're sick. So with vaccines, you're not sick. You're being told this is going to prevent you from getting sick, probably, a certain percentage of effectiveness. So that right there is a little hard. I think it's hard for anybody just as a human to sort of totally accept. And then, there were some side effects from this vaccine. The first series of shots, younger people in the age group of like teenagers to 30, about 1 in 50,000 had this myocarditis reaction where the heart, inflammation of heart tissues, and apparently almost all of those cases, resolved without any, long-term effects. But still, it's very frightening. A lot of people are hospitalized with that, so that's really scary. And 1 in 50,000 is not very many, but if it happens to you, if it happens to your kid, that's totally real. And then there were some other, things that were rare with some of the other vaccines that happened. People had allergic reactions to some of these vaccines, pretty rare also, but that happened. And then there are a few things like that happen after you were vaccinated that probably have nothing to do with the vaccine, but they maybe happened within a week or two after. And then there are really a lot of people out there who are using this for political reasons, I think, to sort of teaming up the vaccine skepticism with skepticism of the government in general. And there are people who make money off of saying vaccines don't work, use this vitamin instead, use this. I mean, seriously, you can't underestimate that.
We got to end it there. So that was good information. I appreciate you. Arthur Allen written an article with KFF News. The news article, why the CDC has recommended the new COVID booster for all. Thanks for your time. Got to be back.
Thank you.
Look forward to your next article.
Thank you so much.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back. Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time on our Roundtable and our partner, the National Nurses United. Today is Saturday, September 16, 2023. September is National Suicide Prevention and Hispanic Heritage Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Clement, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scout Honor Productions. And we have, once again, Adelina Marshall. She's a VA mental health nurse, and she brought us a panelist, Sandra Wilkes. She's a primary care nurse, and we're going to talk about preparing for your upcoming appointment for positive outcomes. That's a very, very important topic, I think. So we're going to get into that. How you doing, Adelina? Can you hear me? Sandra, you there? You're still silent. See if we get them on. I think they're raising them up right now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you are. So how you guys doing today?
I'm doing great.
Well, thank you.
So tell us, Adelina, what experiences have you had in your career? You've been a nurse for a long time, many, many years. What experiences have you had that made you want to talk about this topic?
Well, we're getting more and more patients coming into the VA, and we want to offer them support and encouragement and education on how to make that experience more meaningful for them. And that's why I invited Sandra to come on today. She is one of our clinical nurse specialists, and she's able to give them a wealth of information during this podcast.
So, Sandra, what can you add to that? So, what experiences have you had in your career that prompted you to kind of make sure that people have this information?
Well, to have positive patient outcomes, it's very important to make sure that there's lots of education and also to empower the patient in their care. So it's a collaboration. It's more of a whole health type of approach to make them aware of what medications they're taking, what disease or illnesses they have, what they can do for better patient outcomes and better health.
And so what are some of the things that make a negative outcome for the patient?
When they are not compliant with their medications, when there was a lack of follow-up, when instruction to the patient from providers and medical staff perhaps may not be clear or on a level of education that patients can comprehend.
Oh, so tell us now in detail, what are some of the things you want us to know about positive outcomes? How do we prepare for our appointments?
So the best thing for the patients and for the medical staff is when patients come to their appointments to bring a complete list of the medications that they're taking. Not just the medications that are being prescribed, but also any over-the-counter medications. They should really know the names, the dosage, and the instructions for all of those medications so we can provide the best care.
Now, with that tip, are there some helpful hints as to how? Because people that are older sometimes they forget, or they unfortunately sometimes misplace medications. I've seen my mom do that sometimes. But what are some of the things that they can do as a helpful hint to make sure that they have those medications or remember those medications? So if maybe they find themselves with a health emergency, and the doctor might ask them, they might not have all their pills with them at that time. The doctor might ask them, what medications are you taking?
So what we like to provide them with is an after-patient summary at the time of their appointments. What that does is it lists their entire healthcare team, and the list of the medications, doses, and instructions. We ask that they hold on to that and use that as a reference.
No, so, but say they have an emergency where they're not able to get to that. Maybe that's in a drawer somewhere at the house, and they're out, having dinner, and then all of a sudden, something happens, and they need to go to the emergency room.
Well, depending upon which emergency room, if they come to Jesse Brown, they have access to their medications. If they go to an outside emergency room, we have a collaboration where ED doctors can always call our facility so that we can do a medication reconciliation.
And then is it a good idea to have a good relationship with your pharmacist and to ask questions so that way the pharmacist can kind of explain, like maybe what are some of the side effects of certain medications, or how do certain medications interact with others, things like that?
Absolutely. One of the beauties behind primary care is that there are pods which consist of a pharmacist, a social worker, an RN, LPN, clerical, and your primary care physician, also an avenue for mental health. This allows for a complete collaborative approach for the patient in educating them and reaching the best outcomes.
So what are some other things you think are really important to prepare for your upcoming appointment?
So for those patients that check their blood pressure at home, we provide them with a blood pressure machine. We ask them to bring in that machine and to bring in a log sheet of all their blood pressure readings. We want to compare what the readings are that they're getting at home with what we get in clinic. We also like to check their blood pressure machine, make sure it's operating correctly, and make sure that they know how to operate it.
And what are some of the things you found when people bring it in? Are people doing a good job of measuring their own blood pressure using these machines?
A lot of patients are doing a really good job. When we issue the blood pressure monitor, we go through every step with them. On occasion, we'll have a patient come in that is somewhat confused. We can do a demo and then a return demo on the patient's side just to make sure that they're able to go through the steps to achieve the correct readings.
And what else would you want to recommend for people?
We would also like for them, if they check their sugars at home, bring in their monitors. It's for the same purpose, so they can review all their sugar readings throughout the day. If they've been hospitalized and discharged, it's really important to them to bring in the discharge information, any updated medication lists, and any follow-up services that they need.
And then what would you say is probably the most important thing, if you could pull out one tip that you should do no matter what? I would imagine bringing your medications in, because I hear that oftentimes with doctors. That is, I know, a big one. But what else would you say is probably the most important thing that people can do to have a positive outcome when they have an appointment?
They can bring in a loved one if they need somebody to help them ask questions or gain clarity. One of the programs we're starting right now is we're encouraging patients to write down questions. What are their thoughts? What is their purpose for coming in today? What's the goal that they want to achieve during their appointment? So that we're also including the patient in their care, so they're having a decisional input into what's going on in their health.
Now, when you bring up someone in, is it a good idea to have keep a journal so that maybe and what are some people's thoughts when you recommend this as far as privacy goes? Who is the right person to bring in, and then is it a good idea to write things down and maybe share that so people have an idea about what is going on in your life?
Absolutely. So to answer your first question, it's up to the patient who they feel comfortable with in the room. It could be a spouse, it could be a brother or sister. That's absolutely up to them. Once they authorize a person to join them in the room, then there's no HIPAA violation. So it's purely up to the patient in their comfort level. The idea of the journal is amazing and fantastic. I have recommended this to patients when they have very complex diseases or illnesses or are having several appointments. Keeping a journal allows them to see the progression of their care and where they need to go for the next step. So they can use your journal for appointments, for specialties, for medications, whom they've spoken to, so that then they can build their own team and be able to communicate consistently for continuity of care.
Anything else like to add to those positive things that you can do?
There's one.
Number one.
Yeah, to add is that when patients come to the clinic, they also need to discuss with their clinicians and the nurses about their sleep hygiene, if they're having problems sleeping at night. Are they waking up in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom often? Because this can also trigger the nurses to ask more questions to, make sure they don't have bladder infections or prostate issues or perhaps sleep problems that will impact their care.
And I think you touched on a really important thing, Adelina, because I judge a good nurse, if I go to get any kind of care at the hospital or a good doctor, is how many questions they ask me. Because sometimes I'll just ask a general question and then you just you're forced to just ramble on and try to figure out and pull things out. And I often forget about a lot of stuff that I needed to bring up until after the appointment is over. I'm walking out of the appointment thinking that I'm like, oh man, I forgot to bring about this, and because I only had this at one point, but then this is bothering me now. So I think a journal could help with that. But Sandra, what types of things would you recommend to kind of get, if you have a doctor that's not maybe asking a lot of questions, I like the idea of writing your questions down ahead of time and bringing everything down with you, which could be done in a journal. It could just be a notepad that you just carry around to the appointment. What are some of the ways that you can do as a patient that you can use to try to have better conversations with your doctor? No, Sandra.
Well, again, using the journal, writing the questions down previously, I think you raised a great question. You know, if the physician isn't asking the questions, the triage nurse, which is the first step to coming into the clinic, will be asking several questions. There's many different reminders regarding systematic body functions and vaccines, et cetera. That, too, will start to trigger those questions and start to pull out information from the patient.
Adelina, you'd like to add anything to that? What are ways that a patient can stimulate conversation if the doctor, maybe this doesn't have the greatest bedside manner, maybe they're not, you know, they're more focused on research versus, you know, working with hands-on with the patient?
Well, our doctors are there to work hands-on with the patients if they're in the clinic. However, patients or their loved ones can always Google maybe their symptoms and then bring that forward so that the nurses can make sure that the patient is telling us everything we need to know. Again, that list is very, very important. I had an appointment the other day, and I had written down some things that I had questions about, and one was about a new medication. So those are things that can start the conversation. Sometimes patients are a little anxious about having to go to their appointments, but we encourage them to keep all appointments, and that's important for continuity of care and for actually addressing some of the care concerns that we have along racial boundaries. So we have to be able to know what is going on. Discuss it with your caretaker, because perhaps if you're coming with someone, then they might be mindful of some of the concerns that you discuss with them, and they can share that with the nurses who are triaging them, and then with the doctors.
And also, I think chemistry plays a big part of it as well, because sometimes when, you know, certain patients might react or have better conversations with certain doctors than others. I mean, depending just personalities or style or things like that. Is it easy in the VA system to change doctors if you're talking to a doctor? And oftentimes, and I will admit, I mean, I've watched friends of mine do this where they don't feel empowered enough, I would say, maybe that's the best way to say it, to say, you know what, I don't communicate well with this doctor. You know, the doctor seems nice and everything, but we're not on the same page. You know, maybe I should change doctors in the VA system. So is that easy? Is that an easy process to do, Sandra?
That is an easy process, and it does happen. And, you know, you're talking about chemistry, it could be cultural, and it is an easy process. So we're very, very sensitive to that. If a patient feels that they're not being listened to or being cared for in a manner that they want, it's easy to have a reassignment. And the same goes with their nurse. If they're with the nurse and that's feeling uncomfortable to them or they feel they're not being heard, we can actually make that switch in staffing right then and there at their appointment.
Let me ask you this. Does that rub anybody the wrong way if a patient does that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because we have to remember the end of the goal, the goal that we want to achieve is to make sure that the patient's getting the best quality care. So you take the emotion out of whether somebody is not having a great conversation with me or a physician and they need a change. That's what is utmost important, is what they're feeling and what their needs are.
What are some of the most common complaints that patients have when their experiences? Because I would imagine a negative outcome is going to lead to a complaint. So what are those most common complaints that you hear about? That's for either one of you. We can start with you, Sandra.
I think some of the most common complaints is that the patient feels that the employee is not giving them their full attention. And, you know, sometimes we are distracted maybe by something that we had to get done right away, even though the patient is sitting there. So we do ask the patient to to understand that we're handling multiple patients, and momentarily it may appear that we don't have we're not giving them 100% our intentions, but we are. Many of us do multiple tasking just to get things done, and I can see how that might happen.
Sandra, what can you add to that?
I would have to agree with that. I think on occasion I will hear from patients saying, you know what, I'm not being heard, I'm not being understood, and my questions are not being answered. And then when you hear those comments, then it does alert us that we need to maybe refocus, readjust to make them feel more comfortable. But as Adelina says, you were multitasking constantly, and you could have one veteran in front of you that's asking you 3 or 4 questions at a time, and you're trying to process each question. That can be interpreted as not listening, but we're just trying to address everything.
So out of all the things that you deal with when you're as a nurse, Sandra, and also Adelina, I'm thinking brings up to you, what are one of your pet peeves with things that patients do? Because I know patients aren't perfect. Patients, even though we might think or say that the patient's always right, is that really true? What are some of the mistakes that patients do that make their own situation worse than what it needs to be?
I would say the thing that stands out to me is missed appointments. Because in order to provide the care that the veteran is seeking, there has to be follow-up. And there are some patients, for a variety of reasons, that don't come to their appointments, and that can be a little disheartening.
Adelina, what about for you?
Public needs to understand that we are very guarded about our veterans. And when they miss an appointment, we become concerned, like their family members, where they're not just a number to us. We've grown to know these patients through the years, and so we get very concerned. So would encourage them to keep their appointments, or at least to call, so that we know that they're okay. I mean, I still think of patients that I've had over 30 years ago. That's how embedded we are with the care of our veterans. And we know our veterans have been through a lot, and we know that. And so that's why we uniquely prepared to care for them, and we know them. So we want to encourage them to keep their appointments. And if they feel they need another appointment, to come in or call and reschedule.
Now, what percentage?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Sandra. What did you have to add?
And I was just going to add to that. Often when they're missed an appointment, or we will call them and we will check in on them. Sometimes we call the patients when they don't even have an appointment, because we know that they're going through a difficult time, whatever those circumstances are. And frequently we will just call them just to check in, just to make sure they're okay.
So what percentage would you say are seniors in your practice? That's for Sandra and Adelina. For Sandra, start first.
A great deal, because in primary care, that will, of course, our World War II are getting less and less, but a great deal of them are seniors, because the baby boomers are getting into the senior world. We have a separate clinic, the OEF clinic, that sees primarily the 20, 30, and 40-year-olds. So a great deal of our population, I would probably have to say 80 to 85 are seniors.
Wow. Adelina, would you agree with that?
Well, yes, I work mental health, so we're starting to see many of our veterans who receive mental health care at the VA, aging, and we are very concerned, about their care, because many of the mental health patients do not follow up as they should, and then we see them and they have multiple comorbidities. And that's another reason why we encourage them to follow up, or to come in. If you haven't made an appointment, then you can still come in, and then the VA do have clinics during the day that, like urgent care and even the emergency room. We want to have our patients come to the clinic versus the emergency room, but we do have an urgent care area that they can be seen. So for those who get busy with life and say, oh, I forgot, I need to go see the doctor, just come in. Come in and see it.
And what challenges does that pose to planning the perfect appointment for a person, especially for the senior community? Since that's your biggest cohort, what would you say is really, really important, particularly for seniors, and making sure that their appointment have positive outcomes?
Well, the fact that they're welcome, first of all, and then that they understand that the VA is not like private sector. And so we welcome all our veterans whenever they need us. We're there for them.
We will not turn a veteran down, whether they have an appointment or not have an appointment. We will accommodate them in some manner and address what ailment or concerns or questions they have when they present to Jesse Brown.
But then also, too, these veterans, particularly older veterans, have specific needs that you don't typically see maybe in a civilian hospital. What are some of those things that, how do you address those issues?
I think transportation may be one, and then Sandra can expound on that. I do see where there's transportation offered, for our veterans. Yeah.
So a lot of our veterans, you're losing their mobility and their ability to move comfortably and drive. So there's actually several transportation opportunities. The VA, if the qualifications are met, the VA will come and pick up the patient, whether they're in a wheelchair or if they're bedbound. We coordinate through our social worker, through PACE for free bus passes. There's a disability PACE services that are also available, and we also utilize Catholic Charities, and there's also volunteer transportation services. Actually, depending upon what the circumstances are and the issues, there's many opportunities for the patient to get to the VA, and we can guide them through all that.
And another thing, and one reason why I'm going back to specifically focusing on seniors, is a lot of the seniors from the Vietnam era particularly had toxic exposure, and that's also come up again with Afghanistan and Iraq. And that's something that I'm not sure how I would imagine that the VA sees a lot more of that, vastly much more of that than civilian hospital would see. And a lot of these things have the treatments the access to treatment has changed recently with the CARE Act, so more people now can go to the VA and get treated. What are some of the things that maybe veterans need to know about that to be prepared for an appointment when they're getting treated for these toxic exposures?
So since that was the PACT Act that was passed, I believe, this year, which actually recognized all the toxin exposures all the way from Vietnam to present. And so legislation recognized that and realizes that there's medical ailments that are actually associated with those toxins. Every veteran that comes in, we screen them, each and every one, and ask if they've had an exposure. If so, where was it or what was the exposure? We give them information on that and a phone number to register. And so this is nationwide. It's a huge act, and they have had fantastic outcomes in the actualization that many veterans have now joined the registry, which means to the veteran that if they are having an ailment that's associated with the toxin, then they will have care, and then they will be followed. For those veterans that have had an exposure but not having a medical illness, once they register, it sets the clock for them, because we don't know what's going to happen to their medical conditions 10 or 20 years from now. So this has been a great piece of legislation where we've been able to address each and every veteran and document all of their exposures and make sure that they receive treatment for that.
I really appreciate your time, and I think you gave us some really powerful information. Once again, if I could run it down, it seems like one of the biggest things we talked about is making sure that you are listening to your doctor, but also bringing your medications in, whether a list of medication or just bringing in your medications. then if you're going to the same doctor, they should have that information on the system. They should have that information listed in their databases. But then the possibility of keeping a journal, writing down your experiences in a journal, what's going on in your life, can really be helpful. And having someone there with you when you're going to an appointment. So that way, if there's questions you might have forgotten about or things that maybe you don't understand, there's someone there that can help you, particularly if you're a senior. I think that's really a good idea. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate the information you give. Is there anything else you want to add?
I just wanted to mention one other thing, and that is once the patient leaves the appointment, if they have additional questions or something's not clear to them, they have the opportunity to call us or join My Healthy Vet, which is a secured email system. So the conversation can continue between nurse and patient or doctor and patient even after they leave their appointment.
I appreciate that. Alina Marshall, VA mental health nurse, and Sandra Wilkes, primary care nurse. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having us, and thank our veterans and the public for listening. Thank you very much.
So veterans out there, make sure you connect with AHG, America's Heroes Group. You can reach us on americashg.org, our website. Also, you can email us at americashg.org. And also make sure you see us on Facebook and YouTube. There's a huge catalog of information in our database. If you go onto our website or our YouTube channel, you can see past shows and even just search different topics. You can learn about how to navigate the healthcare system and the VA system. Learn all the different things you need to know about PTSD. If you're struggling with anything in your life, use the tools and resources, and also reach out to the Veteran Service Organization that we highlight. Those veteran service organizations can help you with a myriad of things and also make your life a lot better and easier. You worked for it, you earned it, take advantage of it. This is America's Heroes Group. We appreciate your time and your listening. We can also hear us on WVON AM 1690 in Chicago. We'll be right back again next Saturday, 4 to 6 p.m. We'll see you next week.